Welcome to the Exploring Unschooling podcast. I'm Pam Laricchia, longtime unschooling mom and author. Join me and my wonderful guests for interviews, information, and inspiration about unschooling and living joyfully with your family. You can find the episode show notes, your free introductory ebook, What is Unschooling, and lots more information at livingjoyfully.ca. And here's the show. Hi everyone, I'm Pam Laricchia, and this is episode number 96 of the podcast. It's the 1st of November, 2017, as I record this intro. And in this episode, I have so much fun bringing Anna Brown and Pat Robinson together to chat about ordinary unschooling. We talk about the idea of, quote, unschooling success stories, the impact of the conventional independence agenda, which starts very young in our culture, the incredible value of ordinary unschooling days, and lots more. And as a personal update this week, I'm back. We had a wonderful vacation in Florida. We really enjoyed having 2 weeks. It was so relaxing to be able to intersperse the high energy activities with the low key ones. So the first week we were in Orlando and we hit Harry Potter World, which was awesome and high on everyone's wish list, as well as Epcot, which was lots of fun too. We also spent a couple of days around the pool and playing games. And one night, Michael and I attended John Green's Orlando book tour stop, which was great fun. The second week, we were on the Gulf Coast. So we really enjoyed a local kayaking tour. The Moat Aquarium and Laboratory was lots of fun, and the Ringling Circus Museum, as well as taking the rowboat out on the bay, walks on the beach, bike rides, sunsets and sunrises, and lots of games. We played most nights, and the ones that got lots of play were Forbidden Island, Exploding Kittens, Munchkin, and Starflux. It was such a great time. And it's really nice to be back home, too. I'd like to take a moment to send a huge thank you to everyone who has chosen to support the show on Patreon. And a big welcome to new patrons, Manuela Tegler and Amy Martinez. I deeply appreciate my patrons. You guys inspire me, and I love that you're helping me share unschooling information with anyone who's curious to learn more about this wonderful lifestyle. And if you'd like to support the show, even for as little as $1 a month, check out the Exploring Unschooling page at patreon.com. That's patreon.com/exploring unschooling. And this week, I want to share a quote from the interview. Anna shared, I just want to take my moment here to encourage everybody to think about how we communicate with young people. And instead of asking about school or college or life plans, talk about their favorite book or show, or have they been to any good restaurants, or do they have a favorite place to hike? How's their week going? Anything that actually connects you with the actual person standing in front of you. I thought that was such a great reminder. When we have the opportunity to chat with young adults, engage with them directly. Connect with them as an actual person, not with the societal expectations that buzz around them like annoying flies. I hadn't really thought of it that way until Anna mentioned it, but now the difference is stark. Connect with the person rather than trying to place them within the framework of conventional expectations. Whether or not they're unschooling, they are human beings with likes and dislikes and interests. I really love that point. And now, on to my conversation with Anna and Pat. Hi everyone, I'm Pam Laricchia from livingjoyfully.ca, and today I'm here with Anna Brown and Pat Robinson. Hi guys.
Hello.
Hello. This week, we are going to talk about everyday, ordinary unschooling. We want to focus on celebrating all unschooling children and dig into why we may, especially at the beginning of our journey, be drawn to seeking out and sharing stories of quote-unquote successful unschoolers. So to start us off, you guys have both been on the podcast before, but let's just do a quick recap for new listeners. How many children do you have, and how long has your family been unschooling? Do you want to start, Anna?
Sure. So I have two daughters, and they are about to turn 18 and 20, and we have always unschooled. And our oldest led us to unschooling very early on. And I actually met Pat very early on, just after we moved to Charlotte, when I guess my girls were probably 1 and 3, and her son was even younger than that. So.
Pat?
Well, we've just pretty much always unschooled. Anna introduced the idea of unschooling when our son was about 6 months old. He's 16 now. And so when we just explored it, and we just continued to observe him learning, and we just always just lived and learned together.
That's awesome. So let's dive into our topic for this week. There's a tendency for people new to the idea of unschooling to seek out success stories in an effort to prove to themselves that unschooling is a viable option before they make the leap. And that's totally understandable. But the challenge with that is it can set up expectations on our children to, quote, find their passion or start a business at 15, etc. I saw a quote the other day, homeschooling is private school for poor people. Now, that attitude can make life challenging for unschooling kids, though, can't it? Do you want to start, Anna?
Yeah, so I think that anytime we have an agenda or a set outcome in mind, we're really closing off opportunities, and that ends up harming our connection with our kids. So there's the quote of expectations or pre-planned resentment. So I think, when we're putting ourselves out in the future, that can be hard. I think the most harmful aspect of this idea is that it takes our focus away from our child. We can't see who they are. If we're looking at what other people are doing and thinking it will look the same for our children, that takes us out of the moment in front of us, and it disconnects us from seeing our child and appreciating their unique path. And I think another idea that Pat and I have talked about before is this idea of the composite unschooler, because and we actually noticed it recently in a comment on another group where someone was comparing their inside, their family, who they are, with someone else's outside. Because what we're seeing when someone communicates on Facebook or even with us directly is just one little bit and one little piece, and it's so much more complex than that. So, I just turn that focus back in and on that connection with your child, and that's really where I like to keep my focus. Pat?
Well, most people define unschooling as, or success as achieving and accomplishing, advancing, progressing, attaining something performance-oriented, not outcome-oriented parenting or product-oriented parenting. We've seen that a lot, even with an independence agenda, where there's this pressure to get ahead and show off, basically. I was asking my son about this, and he said, yeah, it creates a lot of pressure, and it reduces your desire to learn because you're afraid that somebody's going to be judging you, whether you're going to be doing it according to their definition of success. Instead, we just enjoy our life doing what we love. And we've just been focusing on what our son loves all along. Like, he liked trains, and we explored trains. We went to the train museum every week, and we happened to learn about engines, and we happened to learn about the train being built across America. But it wasn't that we were just exploring history. He just wanted to do trains. And it wasn't that there was an agenda for him to learn. He just loved trains. We did trains morning, noon, night, and day, all the time. And then there was a time when it was music, and he just wanted to explore music. And it wasn't that we had an outcome that he was going to become a musician, or that he was going to become a train engineer, or that he was going to be some performance artist with music. And then it became Pokemon cards, and we just collected Pokemon cards and went to Pokemon League and found friends there. And it wasn't that there was an agenda or an outcome associated with doing the things that we love.
No, I agree.
Yeah, I think one of the hard things too, I think this is something that comes up on our unschooling journey often enough, depending on, the people that you're surrounded with. But, at first it's, I'm going to make this really unconventional decision. I kind of want some proof that it's going to work. And then once you start, then you have family around you, right, who are watching you to kind of see, and you feel this need to, well, I have to prove to them that this was a good choice, and you can almost get caught up, well, I need to prove that it's better than school because I chose, for my kids not to go to school, or we chose together to not bring that into our lives. And that's the thing, you can get really sucked into that, well, this needs to be better because you're still stuck in that comparison with school, right? Yeah.
I think that if we just allow is not the right word, but just continue to enjoy being captivated by the things that we're fascinated with and immerse ourselves with that things that we're delighting with, like video games or animals or outdoors or birds or whatever, then those things, they don't lead to something. They are their own thing of fulfilling life. I mean, it fills our lives with joy. And I've found that families and strangers are fascinated when our children are so informed and passionate. Like they're like, our kids don't know what they want to do, as if that's supposed to happen at a certain point. And children just are doing what they love. It's not something that they have to do.
Right.
Yeah, and it looks so different, doesn't it? And that point you made about the assumption that, if they're into something, then what career is that going to lead to, right? Like,
right.
Yeah, I know my daughter with photography, from the time she was 13, people around were saying, oh, well, she's going to be a photographer. It's like, oh, phew, they found their lot in life, right? So yes, a big part of this issue revolves around how we choose to define success, right? Mm-hmm. That was definitely a huge part of my deschooling process, because when we define success more conventionally, like you guys were talking about, by accomplishments and looking at it that way, that can definitely be at odds with the unschooling lifestyle that we're trying to cultivate. So I just thought it would be fun to chat about how we define success nowadays. Would you like to start, Pat?
I've always, even before we learned of unschooling, I've always just chosen the lifestyle that brings me joy. And if something hasn't brought me joy has been the compass point, like the North Star, like that. Apt reference, but just to follow that which brings me joy. And then if I find that it's not, then I veer the different way, and I veer a different way. And it has changed my career and enriched my career and broadened my life. And it's not just the career time, but even before, when I learned of unschooling, it's a lifestyle that brings you joy. I asked my son, and he thinks that it's being happy and enjoying yourself. That's success. And there are plenty of adults that don't have that definition of success. And they've done the mainstream thing, and they've done all the things they're supposed to, and they're still not feeling happy and enjoying their life.
And I think the idea of success is really just a completely different paradigm, because it's pretty much always an external measure. And so I love that unschooling really gets us out of that deficit focus, success looks this one way school model that's so pervasive in our culture. And so I think that's why it's kind of hard for us to even answer that question, because I think it's that other paradigm. And what I know is that I can only speak for myself, like what my life looks like for me. And I look at my life in terms of connections. How am I spending my time? How am I moving through the world? Am I spending the time with people I love? Am I doing work that's meaningful to me? Am I connected to my family and community in a way that feels good? And I found that when I care for those things and cultivate that feeling of connection and joy, just like Pat was saying, in those moments, then the rest kind of takes care of itself. Opportunities arise, doors open. We've just always encouraged our girls to think about what they love and how they want to spend the time that they have here, trusting in their journey, and have seen paths and opportunities open up as they walk towards what interests them. So it's just like Pat's saying, I feel like that's what we've seen. And so, but you're right, Pam, it's like this very different idea. And so it's that first step of thinking we're going to unschool, but then it's really just leaving all of those other pieces behind, because it just kind of clouds the way.
I love that. And it's a huge paradigm shift. And I think that's where the challenge is in that. Like you were saying, when you focus on connections and joy and meaning, doors open, opportunities appear. But before you start, when you've learned all your life to look for those opportunities first, right. and then that's what you need to accomplish, and you define your path by that opportunity. It's a huge shift to trust at first, to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on now the connections, joy, and meaning in my life now, and to trust that awesome opportunities and things will appear, because they do. But there's that trust at first before you've experienced it a few times to realize, right?
Well, I think mainstream, that there's this external measurement of what success is. It's either a title, a big house, wealth in a financial way. And when I was done with high school 1,000 years ago, I just wanted to contribute to my community. So it wasn't an external measure of success. And so I've always felt successful at doing that. Like I was able to do that by being in the Big Brothers Big Sisters thing. And I was able to contribute to my community. So it's like you're saying, Anna, with connections, it's a different paradigm. It's not this measurable outcome that somebody else is observing. And it's the same thing with thinking you need to measure learning in school, where they have to have a test to measure that you're learning, although they are not testing the things that you may be learning. And so they don't think that you're learning, and you have to learn the things that they want you to learn so they can measure it. But they can only measure things that they value in a concrete, quantitative way, as opposed to your ability to be in a family, or your ability to balance a checkbook, or to compare and contrast a financial decision, or how to build a garden. Those are not things that they're measuring, that families can be learning, that contribute to their joy, to their family, or to their community.
Right. And so I really see those things as outside limits. When we're looking at these, is it measurable? Are people defining it as success? Did they see us as successful? I mean, obviously, these are not questions I have, but I mean, if someone were, look at how limiting, feel the confinement of that versus this, just following your joy and creating a garden, or learning to have chickens, or doing this, or creating relationships. And that there's so much meat in all of that, just day-to-day ordinary life, that I think you can miss out if you're worrying about these measurable outcomes.
Yeah, do they have algebra by 8th grade? Really?
Yeah.
As opposed to 9th grade or 6th grade, or versus as a college class. If you're measuring that as success, you're missing all the rest of the world that's happening. That's adding joy to their life.
You know what piece came up for me as you guys were talking, because in relation to what we're saying now, and then the question before, when we were talking about, that need to prove to other, especially in this context, to other people, because it's about measuring success, right? And I think something that can come up, I know it's one thing I worked through, was it wasn't even me trying to prove so much. It was about getting, there's one or two people in our lives that we really want their approval. You know what I mean? Oftentimes it's parents or somebody significant in your lives. And like we were saying, these are all, this shift to our definition of success is now a very internal measurement, right? It's the whole point. We're not looking at external measures, yet external measures are really all that other people can see, right? Because they're not inside our family day to day. They don't see our kids, our connections, our happiness, our joy in all the little things that we do. Curled up on the couch watching a movie together. They can't see all this beautiful stuff that's happening in our families that we understand, yet we still have a need. We can still have a need for their approval. So, to feel like we need to explain it and try to say, but this. And it gets us defensive. And then we start to worry. And then we start looking at external measures. And it's that whole cycle again, right?
Well, I think we need to choose what do we want to model? Do we want to model letting others define what success is for us? Or, as my son says, his definition of success is being happy and enjoying himself.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And that's
Beautiful.
what I want to model. I
Yep.
mean, my parents' discomfort with us unschooling isn't my focus. My focus is my child enjoying doing video games 24/7? Because that's what he loves. And if I'm limiting him because my parents don't see the measurable value of video games, then I'm teaching him indirectly by modeling a focus on what my parents think.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're showing him that what as this external matters more.
Right.
And so I think that's a super valid point. And what I found to kind of address what you're talking about too, Pam, is that my energy really sets the stage for how people see us. So, and I've seen it with Pat so many times, her joy and just exuberance about Eric and Pokemon and those things just turns people around instantly, because they may not understand it and it may not be something that they felt was measurable or kind of fits into the box that they're used to. But her joy, their connection, his joy, we can give people that information. We can share that energy with them, and it turns around those conversations so quickly.
It really does. And I found when I was working through that, in that first year or two when we were unschooling, that's where I got to. It's like, okay, I may have, it was the process of not needing their approval and then realizing we're not going to try, like when we go visit, we're not going to try and show off within your parameters. We're just going to show up as ourselves, our happy, joyful selves. And that energy, like you said, it just bubbles over everywhere, doesn't it? Like all of a sudden there were no negative comments or pointed questions. You know what I mean? It was more like, holy, you guys are like talking to each other and having fun and everything. And they just kind of sat back and watched for a while. So that was awesome.
That might not happen.
Yeah,
the parents may choose not to be connected. The grandparent may choose not to connect. They may choose to continue to judge. They may choose to continue to disapprove. And that is a choice that the parent, grandparent, individually can choose whether they want to have a relationship with their child, whether they want their grandchild to feel judged. And the grandchild will say, I don't want to spend time with them.
Right.
Well, that's one of the things I did to, like, for me, it felt like I was preserving the future possibilities of a relationship between my child and the extended family, because I was providing this buffer so that they didn't get negative, so that, negative messages really weren't there. Sure, we got phone calls after, we got questions after, but not when my kids were there and we were all together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah. So let's talk about ordinary days and ordinary people. I was trying to think of another word for ordinary, but you know what? I like that. I don't mind that word at all. So unschooling parents and unschooling kids going about their ordinary days. Because when we've now gone through that process and we've redefined success to these internal measures for ourselves and individually, not just a measure for a family, but for each of us individually, because we are all different people. But now we see so much more goodness around us, don't we? We love that moment where we're cuddled watching something or playing a game or whatever. There's just so much more great moments around us, isn't there? So I was wondering if you could share your perspective, Anna.
Right. Because so for me, it really is about appreciation for those moments, because that's what we have is that moment right in front of us. And learning and connection, it happens as we actively engage in the world around us. But now that doesn't necessarily mean out in public, because when I said that out loud, I thought, oh, wait, I don't want them to think it means that, because it could mean reading, cuddling on the couch, researching, gaming, hanging out with friends. It's in each of those pursuits, we learn more about ourselves, what we enjoy, how we fit into the world, and that's the beauty of kind of cultivating, caring for each of those moments. So many people in our society are chasing after this external definition of success that we were talking about. And in that pursuit, I feel like they lose themselves and at times even sacrifice their relationships to try to please this external source that really in the end probably doesn't care, and what it is, that they say, there's that meme, you don't wish for more time at work when you're laying on your deathbed. But, even that, there's an idea in that meme that work is drudgery and to be disliked. And I don't think it has to be that way. I think we can kind of throw away that whole paradigm like we're talking about. And then it just opens up all these new and exciting possibilities. We can really honestly just leave all of that behind. And I know it feels foreign and scary to people at times, but you really can, and this amazing life is just waiting.
What I like about it is using the word life, right? Because like you said, that dichotomy between play and work, right? It really does disappear when like joy is your measure and you're making choices. And I love you calling it the North Star, or the compass point that you're following. Because you know what, even if work isn't like a dream job, there's reasons that we're choosing it, that we're doing it, whether it's because we want to learn something new, whether it's because, we want the income to support our family or to support our other interests and hobbies and everything. When we know it's a choice and we're not feeling it's something we have to do because that's the path we're supposed to be on, it's so different. And all our days can more weave together as life rather than this dichotomy of the stuff you get through to the stuff so you can enjoy the other stuff in your day, right?
Our ordinary days are our own goals, just exploring our own goals. It's like summer, pretending it's summer, but it always is. It's just whatever you want to do. You have this big expanse of open time. You get to explore this or investigate that without an agenda or without an expectation that you're going to accomplish something or that you're going to achieve something. It's just enjoying. It's just being present and relaxed.
And Pat, you and I have talked a lot about that unfolding. How is the day going to unfold? Because it surprises us,
We've had too little of those lately. Because if you have things on this schedule, then that creates this interruption. You can't just brainstorm or dream.
Right, that flow, sure.
Oh, you find something, and then you go down my rabbit hole, and you think, oh, now I've learned this, and then you think, oh, what about this? And we just do that. Eric loves to explore different things. I mean, he's fascinated by Southeast Asia history and politics, and because of video games. He wants to understand how it works in South Korea versus North Korea. And it's just all because of video games. He's fascinated by the music of the Japanese culture. And it's not something that I set out to say, okay, we're going to learn Japanese, Southeast culture and politics and history. It's just, and it's not that he has an agenda to use the information. He's just fascinated by it, and he immerses himself in it, and he's passionate about it, and he's captivated to learn more and more and more. And that's a much more enjoyable life when you are in this flow of joyfully learning. Then it's just easy. It's just fun. It's joyful. It's not work.
Yes.
I think that's one of the huge pieces.
Ordinary days. like what's better than that?
Yes, I love that. And that's so true. And that's another one of the things that I just love so much about unschooling. Like you were saying, Pat, learning isn't work, right? And kids, when they go to school, are taught like, this is your job. This is what you need to do. Learning is work. And, so often they graduate, my kids are older now, and from their friends who have gone to school, they're like, oh, I'm so glad to be finished learning. But it's absolutely true from their perspective, right? Because that is how learning is defined in their lives. They don't see the bigger picture of just, you know what, because they don't value, and because in their life, there has been much less value on stuff that they've learned outside school. So that's not real learning. That's just the play.
Right.
That's disconnected from real life. That learning is, the children think work or learning is disconnected from real life in the mainstream, or that it's going to give you some future real life, as opposed to the real life we have right now. We're already full people.
Right.
Why give 8 hours of our life away or whatever to something that's not real life?
Right.
Mm-hmm. And I just love the image. We'll just bring that up one more time of your day unfolding. Just everybody listening, just sink into that feeling for a minute. When something's caught your attention and you're just like, oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this. And you just get into the flow of that moment. It's so peaceful and relaxing, isn't it? I can just feel my whole body like relaxing and just pursuing with excitement. Yes, I love that. Okay, I also want to take a moment to touch on the unschooling kids who are doing things that look more conventionally successful. I think that's the phrase I'm going to use. Because I think what's so different is the entire unschooling ethos within which they're living that moment, though. They're choosing the things that they do, not because they can be successful at them. So it's not, I had this success goal and now I've created my path to it. Right. But they've chosen that activity because it's interesting to them, because they're interested in pursuing it, in diving into it, and may become very passionate about it and spend a lot of hours. So it's not about having other people see them as successful or judging them as better than others in that field or activity, whatever it is. It's not about what other people think at all. It's more about their personal aspirations and goals and joy and interest. But it takes some unschooling experience for parents to understand this, though, doesn't it? It's still like, oh, here we can hold them up as a successful unschooler because what they're doing looks really good, right?
Right.
What do you think, Pat?
Well, Eric, he's 16 now. So 5 or 6 years ago, he heard about this Pokemon world champion. And so he has had this idea that he wanted to go to the Worlds tournament. And it's just been something that, I don't care if he goes to Worlds tournament. I don't care if he's number one. It's not even something he tells other people that he does. It's something that he has asserted as something that he's aspiring to and working toward. So video game world tournament. So we've been to nationals, and so things like that, where he's been aspiring for something that he's measuring himself against his progress. And it's not something that obviously externally people aren't saying you need to be a video game tournament champion as a conventional measure of success. It's not something that is outside of him that's generating this quote unquote conventional type of goal. He just loves playing the video game. He loves the music. He loves Pokemon. He loves the crowd of people at that level, that because it's more challenging and there's more interest in competing against somebody that is at your same level. And so it's somewhat conventional, and yet it's not externally driven.
Right. And so that's, for me, it's like back to letting go of those external measures. And something that I think is so cool about the unschoolers that I know, including Eric, is how internally motivated they are. So even though this is kind of traditional competition in a sense, it isn't coming from this, I have to do this for someone else. It is this internally motivated piece, which I think is so cool. And it doesn't just manifest as the saving the world and backpacking Europe and starting a business at 12, the flashy things that we'll see out there, which certainly happen. And those unschoolers are awesome too. But it's even in making, just small decisions to follow an interest or a curiosity or a flow of that particular day. And I think I know I've mentioned before on the podcast that my youngest works at a movie theater, and that's just a job she wanted to get as a teenager. She's like, this is where I want to work. And she wanted to be around different teens and young adults. And she likes movies, always has. She likes the schedule and she loves it. She loves this job. And, I don't know how long she'll stay there, but again, it will come from her internal drive to stay or to go. It won't be about what others think she should or shouldn't be doing related to it. And I think we have this energy of racing towards the future, and it really pulls us out of the moment. And I love the time and space that unschooling, really allows that unfolding that we're talking about.
Yeah, go ahead, Pat.
As far as unfolding, also, Eric decided at 5 he didn't want to fly on a plane and didn't fly on a plane for 10 years. Didn't want to fly on a plane. He said he didn't like planes. He didn't want to be up high. Didn't like heights. He would do roller coasters. Didn't want to fly. And then Worlds was in California. Got on a plane, flew to California. So just allowing that space for the unfolding, it wasn't like we're going to have some traumatic experience where you're going to have to get on a plane and you have to get over this fear and you have to do this. Why? Like, plenty of people don't ever fly. So, I mean, sometimes we have this idea of what children need to be able to do to get on in the world. But when they're ready and needing to do it, they'll choose. I need and am ready to do this thing that I may have been afraid of, but allowing that years to unfold too. Not just the days.
Right. Oh, I agree so much. And something Pat said to me earlier before we were on the call that I wanted to get at, and let me think if I can think how she said it, but it was this piece of, you were talking about Steve Jobs, Pat, and just how little pieces may seem disconnected when we look at them with this external mind of judging and success. And are they, is this leading to a career or doing whatever? But really, we don't know what all those little pieces are leading to. And that's kind of the beauty. But when we can allow that time and space to unfold and follow the rabbit holes, if we look back, 20 years from now, it might be like, oh my gosh, all those things really did come to this one point, but it doesn't matter. So I think that judging in the moment, let go of that, because we don't know where all these little pieces, where they're building, what we're learning from it. Even if it's just what we like and don't like, that's valuable. But it may be that there's this bigger picture being formed that we can't even begin to understand.
Zigzagging to the future instead of this race, straight line.
Yes.
Like there's this end point that you're going to get to the future, and then you're going to get to be a real person with a real life.
Right. Nope.
I love that. Yeah, I know. You can see the connections looking back, but you can't anticipate them going forward.
No.
And, so letting them unfold is just a beautiful image for it, and zigzagging around. But you will see looking back how those zigs and zags, how things wove through what seemed to be totally unrelated in the moment, right? That zig to that zag, where the heck did that come from? Right. But 6 months, a year later, you see exactly it enriched the journey in some way that you eventually see. But anyway, so for this piece, there was one other observation for me, because I was always asking myself, why do I feel a bit uncomfortable with this idea of like successful unschoolers? And only in that, because as we've been talking about, they're all coming from exactly the same place, right? From the same motivations, because they're following their interests and joy. And to me, it's like all unschooling kids living their ordinary lives day to day are, in a sense of our internal definition of success, successful, right? So, I know, when I would share, I would feel uncomfortable sometimes sharing that, Lissy's living in New York City and she's working as a photographer, and, she moved there when she was 18, because when you look externally at those are cool, quote, successful measures, when she wins an award and gets this show and everything. And part of me is like, well, I feel uncomfortable sharing it because it's not about the external measure, right? It's not about the number. It's not about the award. but those are things that happened along the journey, and absolutely we enjoy them and everything, but it's still all coming from every single ordinary unschooler's days, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. So one other thing that we wanted to talk about, which is another aspect of conventional expectations that we see so often talked about, and I loved Pat's phrase a little bit earlier, this independence pressure.
The independence agenda, yes.
Independence agenda, yes. It's about when teens turn 18. It seems to be such a significant age for so many parents. And it's right there behind like hitting school age, right? Hitting school age, hitting teenage, and then hitting 18. And as parents, we may have been unschooling for many years and be quite relaxed and enjoying the unfolding of our lives. But we may well find new concerns kind of popping up as our eldest starts to get close to that age. So would you like to talk about that a bit, Anna?
Sure. So Pat's son, as we've mentioned, is a couple years younger than my youngest, not quite 2 years younger. And so she's been hearing me gripe about this for a long time and warning her that it's coming because, I think to some extent we were just going along in our bubble, doing what we love. We have this vibrant community all over the world who we visit and do and interact with. We're living our lives. And then this age started to approach. And every single person we met had something to say about it. Everybody, not just family members or acquaintances, but complete strangers. And they were all quite insistent to know what the plans are now. What are you doing now that you're turning 18? And to a certain extent, I'm trying to see the, positive intent. I think people just don't have language to talk to kids or young adults, so they honestly don't know what to say. But there also seems to be a belief that somehow we are entitled to know the personal plans of every young adult. And, I've come to think it's maybe just another form of ageism, because I really feel sure that we do not think we have the right to know the personal business of every other person we meet on an airplane or in the grocery store. And yet we have this belief about kids and young adults. So I just want to take my moment here to encourage everyone to think about how we communicate with young people. And instead of asking about school or college or life plans, talk about their favorite book or show, or have they been to any good restaurants? Do they have a favorite place to hike? How's their week going? Anything that actually connects you with the actual person standing in front of you. And if it's a complete stranger, maybe just a friendly smile. And, because the pressure we're putting on young adults is just enormous. And it takes a lot of work to sort through all of the outside noise so that they can focus on what's coming from inside of them. And so that's really where I've been putting my focus with my girls, is trying to help quiet the noise and protect that introspection, because that's what I really think this time in life is about for them, is coming in and looking and then deciding about next steps, and also just doing what we've been doing, enjoying each day and letting it unfold. It doesn't need to change because of this arbitrary age. So I'm going to step off my box now and see what Pat has to say.
Well, it's interesting because my son doesn't believe schooling is necessary to learn. I mean, obviously, he's learned plenty, right, and he's never been to school. So he doesn't believe that it makes sense to get into debt with a college degree in order to learn, because we're not into debt with a schooling degree, and he still learned. Right. And so he hasn't been asked, to my knowledge, what are you going to do now? And he says, when I talked to him about this, have you been asked this? He says, no, I'm already doing it. I've always been doing it. And I said, well, because what he does and has been doing for years is creating story for developing video games, strategy, characters, plots, graphics, art, language, music. And he's been doing that since he was 11. It's not going to start when he's 18. He's already going to been doing it. He embraces being an artist as a full life endeavor, and he's already doing it. It's not something that's going to be happening in the future. He's been doing it. And recently he's found a Japanese music school that he's considered because he wants the cultural immersion of all of that. Southeast Asia, politics, culture, food, language, and he needs to have a language proficiency of N2. And so we've been going to conversational Japanese, and he's been studying Japanese and all the different ways they write that I don't understand. And he's exploring that possibility. He may or may not decide to do that. But that's what the direction he's going. He may decide he wants to go to England because he likes the English accent too. And so it's just this exploring, weave over here because this is more interesting. And he's already been doing that his whole life. And so he'll just continue to do that at 18. There isn't something that's going to happen differently.
Right. And that's exactly what I want and had envisioned and desire. But then I'm telling you that it's when you're constantly faced with people. I mean, Afton would get quizzed on an airplane. She would get, and it's just, why are we doing this? And Pat got a tiny taste of it when she went to pick up something that I normally pick up, our eggs from this woman who we love, who's a wonderful woman. And she's telling them, Afton is away and she's in Chicago and Anna can't be here. Oh, is she going to college there? And she's doing that. It's just like, oh my gosh, woman.
It's the only one right way. Again, there's this limited way, the mainstream limited way ignores all these infinite possibilities of other ways of living a joyful life. There's one way. You're prescribed this way. But that's not true because we're not living that way and we're happy.
Yep.
What I love is, you were talking, Pat, about your son and Japanese and considering that Japanese music school. And I think for some, depending on what their interest is, there may come a time, independent of age,
yeah.
when they want to immerse themselves more deeply with other people. You were talking about that with the Pokemon tournament as well, Pat, with people that are at their level, their skill level, because the conversation is different. They have a language of their own that is immersed in that particular culture, right? That's what Lissy was looking for when she first went to visit New York City. When she turned 18, she was looking for her tribe, for lack of a better word, her people. We were totally supportive of her interest completely and helping her as much as we could, but we didn't have the depth of knowledge to have those conversations with her, right? That's what she's looking for, and that's what she's found, which is why she stayed there. Phoebe, a few episodes ago, same thing with her drawing. Her parents were very supportive. She was looking to immerse herself more, and she went to RISD for college for a few years to get her degree there. And that's what she found there was her tribe. And if it didn't work out, she wouldn't have stayed for the whole thing. Right. But it's the whole thing, right? It's not when unschooling kids are making these choices, they're making them for themselves from their interest, their aspirations, what they're looking for, not because that looks good on those external measures, right?
Right. And from this field of infinite possibilities, like Pat said, versus this one path that's one size fits all that doesn't fit all.
Yeah. And the other piece of this, what is the whole, moving out? Because I see comments every once in a while, like, are there unschooling kids still living at home when they're, in their later 20s or whatever, and saying, well, that is not successful. You know what I mean? And the idea that for a young adult to be successful in having grown up to a workable, I don't know, what's the right word, adult, because I don't even have the language for all these external measures.
Yeah,
but that they need to move out on their own, right? And why is that even a useful measure unless it's something that they want to do and are drawn to do? Because then they're alone. It's harder to connect with people. They don't have people around them. They're spending extra money for this space. If they are aren't interested in that, that can be a super cool experience for people, and they want that space, and they want,
Sure.
To be able to feel like they're taking care of themselves in their own way, but I don't see that as a measure of success or failure of their childhood, how they grew up. That is just them continuing to make choices and trying out the things and doing the things that they want to do. There's no problem if kids and young adults, are happy in their childhood home or whatever, or hanging out with their family, I don't see that as a useful external measure of success or not.
Well,
right?
I think a lot of parents may be judging themselves against that external measure of I've done parented successfully, child moved out, that independence agenda where that's the parent is feeling judged or judgment. I heard or read that the average American child is financially dependent on their parent until age 27. Now, most of those are not unschooling.
No.
99% of them are not unschooling. They're mainstream public school children who are financially dependent on their parent until, on average, age 27. So there's older children and younger children. So some of them were 18, some of them were 16. It's not like there's only one path to becoming an adult. And the role of the parent is to facilitate, or the unschooling parent is facilitating. You don't stop facilitating at 18. You don't stop parenting at 18. It doesn't have to look cut off. You're 18.
Right. And okay, something just struck me when you said the statistic about the 27, which we've talked about before. But so it's kind of a fallacy, basically, that we have this cultural fallacy that, kids are independent at 18. And then so maybe it's even just having a dialogue around that for people and letting people talk about that more. So anyway, what it reminded me of is just the idea of co-sleeping and kids coming into their parents' beds when they're young. And, people not talking about it, saying it never happened. But then when someone opens that up, then people are like, oh my gosh, they come in all the time. They do this and we love it. And it's this. And it's like, then it's okay because we have this fallacy that it's this one way. So I think, gosh, if we could just talk more openly and acceptingly about that without this need for this independence agenda that, in our culture, we're starting very young. Pop them in the crib by themselves. Go head off to school with your briefcase by yourself, do this by yourself. And what I love about life is community and connections and relationships. And so that's what we've cultivated instead.
Yes, I want to be a trusted advisor, not have my job done at 18 and him stop listening or stop consulting or stop using me as a resource. Like, I want to be able to be a facilitator. I want to be trusted to, as a sounding board. I have another family friend that her son, he's graduated with a master's, and he was applying for a position, and they were offering him less than his current position, but it was going to be remote, so he could work from home. And he was consulting her and saying, what is the added value of working from home? And the other male figure in his life was saying, well, there's a $15,000 value because of the cost of driving, so he was consulting these people that he respects. And it doesn't have to be he has to make the decision either all by himself because he's 18 or 25.
And not only that, not only from that perspective, but how enriching is our life with these young adults? We're learning. I mean, you're telling me things constantly you're learning from Eric. I know I'm learning from mine. Pam, it's the same. That you said they're bringing all of this. So we're all together in this contributing together. I just love that.
Our lives are fuller, right? Totally.
Well, and people talk about the empty nest and feeling sad. It's it's a transition to this independence, but it's an interdependence. And it's it's not we culturally hand that interdependence off to colleges and a dorm marm, or whatever be there, keep them from killing themselves in their first year in college or whatever, from their bad choices for having not had opportunities to make choices. But our children have been making their choices all along with support, facilitation, discussion, and it doesn't have to be this jump off the cliff and you're an adult. Do it by yourself and suffer the consequences. It doesn't have to be that way.
No.
No, I love that phrase, the interdependence, right? Because you're right. It's like, there doesn't have to be any difference between one day and the next. Like, when we talk about kids turning school age, from often it's a flow from attachment parenting into unschooling, if you're lucky enough to have heard of unschooling.
Right.
But yeah, that from one day to the next, although it can feel big to parents because we've been so conditioned that way, right? But the days themselves don't have to change at all. And it's exactly the same at 18. We have been conditioned to think, and then the days don't have to change. And jumping back to that condition to think thought, you mentioned that, Anna, and I thought that was great in relation to that study that kids are dependent on their parents in some way until 27. But yes, I see that so often. And parents, they either tried to hide it, that they need to do, or feel guilty that they need to help because they feel like they're being judged. So yeah, no,
But what if we
so much
did
of our conditioning, right?
What if we let go of that? What if we just supported each other and not judging and caring and worrying about it and just enjoying that they're supporting their kids and that they're working together for a goal that it's none of our business.
I tell you, I was reading through, it was on Facebook this morning, and there was a beautiful comment of a mom. She's not even an unschooling mom, but she was talking about her teenagers, her teen kids, and how she connects and relates to each of them is very different. But she just loves it so much, and she's loving the teen years. And, I'm like, yeah, isn't it the most awesome dance with them, of understanding them and learning so much from them? Because she was talking about what she learns from her teens. And I was so happy to just go in and acknowledge that, just to have that conversation. So whenever I see it come up, I always make a point of engaging with them, just to, like you said, to try and increase that conversation just in general, right?
But you use the analogy of dance, and I think it's interesting because that's come up recently. I heard that about somebody who was dying from cancer, and the person said, this is your dance to choose how you want it to be. You can have it, mainstream or conventional or alternative or drawn out or short. Like, you get to choose your portion of this is your dance with death. And similarly with our children, it's their dance, it's their life. And we've been there as a partner, but they get to choose the dance, when they're going to get on the plane and fly to Japan by himself, or maybe we all go for a while. Like, my friend asked me, if Eric goes to school in Japan, is he going to go by himself? And I'm like, I don't know. I guess so. If he chooses it, and if he wants me to be in some facilitatory way, we'll figure out some facilitatory way. It may be that he has a family that's there facilitating him in an immersion situation. I don't know. I don't have to know. I just trust that we'll work it out together.
I love that. I love answering that way, because so often people are asking, well, what's your child going to do? What, even at the dojo, like, is Michael going to go to this tournament? Is Michael going to do this? Is he but for all my kids, and I love saying, I don't know. I'll ask him.
It's his dance.
Exactly. Oh, I love that. Oh, well, I guess, oh my goodness, almost an hour. Way to go, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we go, where's the best place for people to connect with you online?
I guess Choosing Connection or Childhood Redefined for me.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then Heal Thyself or Heal Thyself Q&A.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great day.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. I hope you found it helpful. You might also like the backlist episodes at livingjoyfully.ca/podcast. While you're there, be sure to check out the second book in my Living Joyfully with Unschooling series, Free to Live, Create a Thriving Unschooling Home. In it, I dive into the 4 characteristics that I found helped unschooling flourish in our home: curiosity, patience, strong relationships, and trust. One reviewer wrote, "Really enjoyed this short and sweet book. It has marvelous one-liners, and though I'm not an underliner, I found myself underlining on every page." Another said, "I believe it would benefit any homeschooler or parent to read this book, as it re-emphasizes the importance of the relationship between a parent and a child in the learning process. I plan to reread this book. It is rich and full of gems. Give yourself some time to absorb it before rushing into unschooling." Until next time, have fun living and learning with your family.